Well, it is great to be able to be with all of you, whether here in our studio audience or watching on DTV or somewhere else, some other location or venue around the world. We're really excited about this opportunity, and I'm excited about this opportunity to teach this series. I've done a lot of different Bible series over the years, been in the ministry for about 30 years, and done a lot of different Bible series, but this is my absolute favorite sermon series or series of lessons that I've ever done. I've taught it in many different nations and many different ministries and different churches in different states across the country. And I've been debating, like, should I write a book about this? Because this is like my favorite thing. Or maybe do a video series. And as technology is changing, and Jonathan Hogarth with Disciples Today has been kind of prodding me, I thought this would be the perfect venue to do it in this video series. So thank you so much for tuning in or joining us here today. I think it's going to be very inspirational to you. The things I'm going to share in this series genuinely have the potential to infinitely and eternally change your lives and the lives of many people that you in turn will influence. They've genuinely changed my life. There's one specific moment that this series kind of came about and changed my life that I'm going to be sharing about later on. But over the years since that time, it's changed my life and the lives of many other people as well. And I'm confident that it's going to do that with all of you as well. I'd like to start with a verse that's kind of our launching verse of this whole series. In Luke 17, verse 1, Jesus says to his disciples, "If your brother or sister sins against you, rebuke them. And if they repent, forgive them. Even if they sin against you 7 times in a day, and 7 times come back to you and say, 'I repent,' you must forgive them." The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." He replied, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it will obey you." This is really a cool verse. As the disciples heard the challenge and the expectation of Jesus, specifically, they heard this challenge about their relationships. And Jesus goes, if someone sins against you, you got to forgive them. And they're like, okay, I'll do that. Then he goes, even if they sin against you 7 times in a day and come back and 7 times go, "I repent," you got to keep forgiving them. Some translations say 7 times 70. Now that sounds really good in theory, but imagine being one of those disciples that hears that. And you got some dude that you're thinking about that's like really annoying to you. Maybe they were married, maybe not a dude, maybe they're wives or something like that. They're married to that person. Or somebody just is bothering them and they're thinking, okay, I got to forgive that guy. But if he keeps sinning against you 7 times in a day, it'd be like walking up and just going, "Hey bro, come here," whack, and hitting you in the face and going, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh gosh, I forgive you." Whack! And you do that 7 times and they're like, 7 times 7 times. Like when you hear that, they just go, I got to keep forgiving him that much. And so when they heard this expectation and they heard this incredible challenging statement that Jesus had, their response was, I can't do that. I'm just not enough to be able to live up to that expectation. And so they're kind of wrestling with, either I could lower the expectations or I could run away from the expectations. But they thought, well, I can't lower the expectations. There's Jesus' expectations. I can't run away because I'm just not that kind of a person. So then they responded the only way a serious disciple can respond. They go, okay, I can't do that and I'm not enough to do that. So Jesus, increase our faith. Give us the faith that we need to be able to live up to the expectations you have. And so they knew that compromise wasn't an option. They knew that walking away was an option. The only option was that they had to become more to rise up to this level of expectation. So they cried out, increase our faith. You know, there's been many times in my life over the years that I've felt just like those disciples. I think back to the very beginning when I studied the Bible for the first time. I'd been an atheist for many years. I grew up going to a church, a denomination that just was stale and really didn't do much for me, to be honest. We kind of just went through the motions. And then when I was in high school, I became an atheist. And then when I was my first few years of college at Louisiana State University, I was an atheist as well. And then some things happened, another story for another day, that I started coming to faith. And I started studying the Bible to see what it really meant to be a follower of Jesus. And I remember studying all in 1 week, went through all the Bible studies back then in my junior year at LSU in 1 week, first week of fall semester. Then I remember counting the cost, where I'm going to get baptized the next day. And I remember the guy that was studying the Bible with me, look him in the eye, and he goes, "So you're ready?" I go, "Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to get baptized." And he goes, "Are you ready to be a disciple of Jesus for the rest of your life?" And I was like, "Ooh, I don't know about that." like it just, I mean, we've been studying about discipleship and everything, but it just kind of hit me. And I didn't say that, but that's what I felt on the inside. I just kind of thought, every day, a disciple of Jesus? I thought I was just getting baptized, you know? So we had to study a little bit more before I was ready to make it. But I remember just thinking, how can I live up to that standard for the rest of my life? I remember feeling the same way when I got married. And I love my wife, been married now over 30 years, hard to believe. But back then at LSU again, I remember just being passionately in love with this woman. Of course, I'm even more passionately in love with her now. But I remember those days, and I remember just thinking about getting married. And then I remember being on the stage when the same guy that was studying the Bible with me a couple years earlier is doing the wedding ceremony. And he's like, "Do you take Barry to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love her, cherish her, honor her, keep yourself only for her as long as you shall live?" And I remember just kind of thinking, whoa, that's a long time. And it just kind of hit me like, can I really do that? Can I be like a one-woman man for all the days of my life? I faced that same expectation. Or I remember the first time I was in the full-time ministry, part of the International Church of Christ, and I was leading all the campus ministries in San Francisco. And these were schools like Cal Berkeley, Stanford. We had over 200 students. We had like 250 students, disciples in our campus ministry. High expectations, incredible standards. And I remember just thinking, man, I'm just this dude from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, you know, from LSU. And I was overwhelmed by the responsibility and by the expectations and the visions that people had for me. And so many other times since then, leading First Church in Sacramento, when they asked us to lead a church, I was 26 years old, and I thought, oh my gosh, well, I got to lead a whole church? Well, when? And it was a Friday, and the guy was Ed Townsend. He goes, "Put it this way, you're preaching on Sunday." I was like, whoa, and I got like dizzy. I just sat down, and I felt like these disciples just staggered by the responsibility and the expectations. I remember arriving in Bangkok back in 1993, and arriving there a little after midnight. Our flights landed. You could just smell the smell of mango and humidity and pollution in the air when we landed, and looking out, and everything's Buddhist and idols and stuff. And I remember just going, whoa, how am I going to build Jesus Church in a place like this? I remember moving to Manila, Philippines. And we ended up loving Manila, but at the time we weren't really excited to move away from Bangkok. And the thought of being in Manila, this city that we really didn't know and didn't have any natural affinity toward, I remember just being overwhelmed by the expectation. Then moving to Denver, back in 1998, moving to St. Louis, after that, moving back to Denver. Even now, I feel that way. There are so many times in my life that I've just felt as a disciple, I'm not enough. I can't live up to the expectations. I can't fulfill these responsibilities and these visions. And I face the same dilemma as the disciples. Do I run away? Do I compromise? I think, well, I can't do that. And so the only thing I know how to do is just say, like the disciples did, "Lord, increase my faith." Do you ever feel that way? You ever feel that way just as a follower of Jesus? Do you feel that way now? God's wanting to do so much more in each of our churches. He's wanting to do so much more in each of our ministries. He's wanting to do so much more in each of our family groups, so much more in each of our specific families. He's wanting to do so much more in our marriages, so much more in our individual lives. He has so many lofty, incredible visions and expectations. And we all face those challenges, those visions, and those expectations as Christians constantly. The challenge to overcome sins and temptations that are all around us and that are within us. The challenge to have hearts that are soft and responsive to Him constantly. The challenge to love one another deeply from the heart, no matter who they are, what they look like, and how they've treated you. To reach out to the lost and save souls on a grand worldwide scale. Not just incrementally, not just kind of nudging along at 1% growth, but to really save souls at a grand spiritual, supernatural scale. To build inspiring and powerful teen ministries, campus ministries, singles ministries, married ministries, empty nester ministries, and ministries we haven't even created yet. To build ministries like this that are reaching people. To become like Jesus personally more and more with each passing year. To be faithful till our dying day. To die faithful to Jesus. These are just some of the challenges and expectations that we all live with. We carry those as disciples. And we said, Jesus, Lord, we signed up for that. And I don't know about you, but when I look at that, I just go, good grief. I don't know if I can do that. One day at a time, I don't know if I can live up to that. We're all faced with the same dilemma as those disciples of Jesus. Do we decrease the expectations and lower the standards? Well, that's what most of the denominational world does. They go, oh, we don't need to do what they did back then. Oh, we can just come to church once a week. You know what? You could just go at major holidays. Just go at Christmas time and Easter. You're good enough. Just believe in your heart. That's enough. The world is full of religious compromise. But we read through the pages of Scripture and we go, those are not our expectations to compromise. Those are not our visions to water down. So we as disciples know we cannot water down the visions and expectations. We can't lower the standards. We can't just walk away. So all we can do is declare our present faith is not enough. But Lord, increase our faith. We're left with that only option. That as we face the mountain of vision and expectation that's before us, we stand there as that lone disciple looking up and going, good God, how can I ever live up to this? The only response we can have is the response that the disciples had 2,000 years ago when they declared, when they pleaded, Lord, increase our faith. But how? How do we do that? How do we really build up our faith and help others to do the same? Well, I referenced earlier, there was a point that in my life that kind of gave birth to this specific study. I was in Bangkok, and Bangkok at the time was known as like the most faithless land that had allowed freedom of Christian missions for over 100 years, and yet less than 0.5% was Christian believing of any kind. It literally was in the asterisk other category. There's like Buddhism, there's Islam, Muslim, there's like Shintoism, Judaism, and then there's like asterisk others. And it's like animism, and then Christianity was in the other category. And so we're over there trying to build faith in this faithless land, and there's times that the church did well, but there was this one point that the church was not doing well. I remember my right-hand guy in the ministry showed up at my door the day before we had the start of the year retreat, and he just looked like death, and he'd fallen into horrific sin and just, was telling me all about the sin. We had to step him out of the full-time ministry. I remember so much more sin just coming out of the church, and so many deep-rooted cultural sins in the lives of people. And I remember feeling some pressure from from some brothers that were mentoring me from other places, like, come on, you got to do this, or we're going to pull you out. And I remember just kind of going like, I can't do this. And I can remember so vividly sitting in this one little corner of my apartment where I had this window that could look out over the crazy city. You know, I could see some other apartments and buildings and so forth. And I'd have my quiet time sitting there. And I remember sitting there just crying and just saying, God, I can't do this. I can't do it. And I went through that same thing as the disciples, like, but I can't lower the expectations. I'm not going to give up. There's not give up inside of me. And I thought, I need to increase my faith. And I thought, but how? How do I increase my faith? And so I started this Bible study that led and gave birth to this series that I just studied through in the scriptures. Everywhere that I saw the Bible teach about how faith could grow, or that I saw followers of God experience taking strides or leaps in their faith. And I studied all these things out and categorized them and came up with what I really saw as like Holy Spirit inspired examples and teachings of how any follower of God can truly increase their faith. And I devoted myself to those studies and got in there and I followed through all the steps and I watched my faith slowly but surely increase. And there's so many more times since that time that I've gone back and reviewed these studies and made them a part of kind of my arsenal of like how to be sustained spiritually, and have taught them to so many other people. So I came up with these 7 practical Holy Spirit inspired, tested and true steps to increasing one's faith. And that's what the series is all about. Increase our faith.